7 more arrests have been made in round 2 of Operation Double Trouble. We'll have much more. Plus, drainage issues have prompted a community-wide effort in Ferdinand, and Purdue Extension educator Jan Dugan talks rhubarbs and strawberries in this edition of Inform. All of that and much more is up next here on the 18 WJTS News. Hello, I'm Bradford Raths. We begin this evening with round 2 of Operation Double Trouble and 7 more arrests. DuBois County Deputy Prosecutor Beth Sermersheim says, as mentioned, 7 people were arrested during a raid early this morning. Those arrested were 38-year-old Michael Bryant Jr., 50-year-old Andrew Dodd, 41-year-old Trell Ferguson, 37-year-old Joni Goldman, 31-year-old Andrian Holmes, 45-year-old Shannon Dean Treadway, and 68-year-old Carrie Trusty, all of Huntingburg. All 7 are facing felony counts for drug dealing offenses involving drugs ranging from acetaminophen and hydrocodone to amphetamine and dextroamphetamine. Sermersheim says a total of 20 people were charged with drug dealing felonies as part of Operation Double Trouble. She says only 19 warrants were secured due to one person passing away prior to the prosecutor's office applying for warrants. Now, in a press conference this morning at the DuBois County Security Center, Sermersheim stated she is pleased with how the operation turned out. However, she says those arrested in Operation Double Trouble will get lighter sentencing than in the past, thanks to changes made to the state's criminal code back in 2014.
Most drug dealing offenses in the past were Class B felonies, which were 6 to 20-year potential penalties. Now, a lot of them, there are ranges, but a lot of them are charged as level 5 felonies with penalties ranging from only 1 to 6 years. I hope that in the future the legislature will bring back the stiffer penalties for drug dealers.
Sermersheim says this morning's arrests mark the end of Operation Double Trouble. Meanwhile, DuBois County Sheriff Donnie Lampert says he's pleased with the cooperation between local law enforcement agencies for Operation Double Trouble. He also says efforts to combat drugs locally will have to become more proactive than reactive in order to change the culture.
If you enjoy sports, you're going to hang out at softball complex, soccer complexes, at the sports complex. If you enjoy drugs, you're going to hang out where the drugs are. It's actually pretty basic psychology when it comes to that part of it. Your way of life becomes drugs.
Sermersheim says a third undercover drug operation is in the works, though of course she could not provide further details. District 63 Representative Mike Braun is among those fighting for better returns to the state in both higher education and health care. Braun says the cost of higher education has reached a point to where there are diminishing returns to those who go to college and to the state. Braun says the continuing rise in cost means the state needs to take a closer look at its investment in higher education.
When it costs as much as a starter home for 1 year, something is wrong. We need to start refocusing our money on the schools within our state that are state supported, that are giving us the best bang for our buck, which means places like VUJC, University of Southern Indiana, Indiana State.
Now, according to data from collegecalc.org for the 2013-2014 school year, Vincennes University had the state's lowest tuition cost at just over $4,600 a year for in-state students. Total yearly costs at Vincennes for an in-state student were just over $14,600. Meanwhile, the University of Southern Indiana had an average in-state tuition of just under $6,360 a year for 2013-2014, with the total cost to in-state students of just over $15,500. Among other state-supported schools, Indiana State reported an in-state tuition of just over $8,000 a year, with Ball State right behind at just under $8,500. The 2 largest state schools, Indiana University and Purdue University, reported 2013-2014 in-state tuitions at $8,919 and $9,208 respectively. Braun says IU and Purdue need to lower their costs and prove that they can generate good returns for what they are charging. Of course, IU and Purdue are both enacting tuition freezes for the upcoming 2015-2016 school year. Now, as for healthcare, Braun has been pushing for several changes as costs continue to rise.
We need to have transparency. We need to make it consumer driven. We need the industry to act like we do in our niche. We compete with 3 or 4 other companies. All of our prices, everything we do is transparent. There's no trying to hide anything.
During the most recent legislative session, Braun authored House Bill 1241, which would have required physicians and healthcare facilities around the state to make information on charges available to the public. That bill stalled in the Committee on Public Health, though the state did unveil the Care Insight website back in January. Care Insight was developed to allow consumers to see hospital quality ratings and average charges statewide for the 100 most common inpatient medical services. In light of the recent troubles with drainage and flooding, Ferdinand officials decided to take the next step to help residents and businesses prevent future disasters. Last night, the Ferdinand Town Council hosted officials from the Indiana Department of Environmental Management and the State Department of Natural Resources for a drainage workshop at the Ferdinand Community Center. The Water It's a Challenge workshop featured 3 speakers, including Heather Parsons and Brad Smith. Parsons is an environmental manager with IDEM, and her main topic was bank stabilization. Parsons says many homeowners are unaware of state policies related to stabilizing stream or ditch banks. She told those on hand that although many people use just rock for stabilization, IDEM recommends doing more than that.
That's not to say that it's not going to go very well. I mean, if you're saying I'm just going to close up 500 feet, well then there's going to be mitigation triggered. But typically with bank stabilization projects, we might ask for the use of some bioengineering technologies, some willow stakes or things like that that'll also help protect those banks along with the rock.
Parsons also outlined IDEM's permitting process. Meanwhile, Smith is the Southwest Indiana Program Office Director for the Nature Conservancy. He advocated for what is known as a 2-stage ditch. Now, 2-stage ditches are essentially a ditch within a ditch. This is accomplished by digging a deeper channel through a ditch, removing the banks roughly 2 to 3 feet above the bottom. The channel is known as a bench and serves as a floodplain zone that gives flowing water more area to spread out instead of overrunning the ditch, thus reducing issues with flooding. Smith also stated that 2-stage ditches have the added benefit of improving water quality.
A 2-stage ditch will remove anywhere from 2 to 14 times the amount of nitrogen out of the water. It'll alleviate 50 for a half-mile stretch of 2-stage ditch. You're going to reduce the amount of sediments by 51 tons per year. That's going to be leaving that ditch.
The Nature Conservancy has been working with the 2-stage ditch idea in Indiana since August of 2003. They were awarded $5 million in grants from the Joyce Foundation for their efforts back in 2007. The Du Bois County Visitors Center and Tourism Commission is now fielding applications for its July grant cycle. The center will be awarding grants from the Tourism Promotion Fund. They will be available to not-for-profit tourism-related organizations along with festivals, events, and attractions that will increase visitor attendance from outside of the immediate area. Special consideration will go to organizations that are establishing first-time events, though previously funded projects can get additional grant money if they can prove an additional benefit to tourism. For an application, you can call the Du Bois County Visitors Center at 482-9115. Completed applications must be received by July 15th in order to be considered for funding. And finally tonight, 4 men have been arrested after authorities say they distributed drugs that fueled the largest HIV outbreak in state history. The Drug Enforcement Agency says Michael Elkins of Cartersville, Georgia was the ringleader. The DEA says Elkins distributed pills of the painkiller Opana throughout southern Indiana's Scott County. Officials say needle sharing to inject a liquefied form of Opana drove the HIV outbreak, which is now up to about 170 cases in all. The DEA says Elkins and John Morgan were taken into custody last Tuesday in Henryville. They were found with about 4 ounces of methamphetamine and 19 Opana pills. The 2 men are charged with dealing in methamphetamine, possession of a narcotic, and possession of Opana. Elkins, Morgan, and 2 other men connected with the case were being held in Jeffersonville. Now, the Indiana State Department of Health says as of last week, 408 people had been tested for HIV, with 169 positive cases and 1 preliminary positive case. The State Health Department says that equates to about a 40% rate of positive tests. Now, this outbreak, of course, began back in February and led to Governor Mike Pence authorizing a needle exchange program for Scott County in late March. That exchange program will continue to be operated through late May of 2016. All right, coming up after the break, rain will arrive in time for the end of your work week and all you'll ever need to know about rhubarbs and strawberries. We're back after this.